on maynard.com.au. Hey, you! Do you get denounced very often because of your contrarian views on the market or on tech and on politics with the No Agenda show?
Actually, what's happened is I've done this for so long that I'm kind of like a Ron Paul. I'm just marginalized. That guy's always saying that. He's just doing that to be contrarian. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in my life. Oh, that's just the way he is. He's just saying that just because he's trying to get a rise out of it. He's just saying that because he's contrarian. So, no, I don't get that very rarely. Once in a while, some new person doesn't know who I am. They don't know the backstory. They get all worked up, but then they get shouted down by the others.
It's always enjoyable when you're on This Week in Tech and there's some new whippersnapper, some millennial there, and you'll say something, and they'll just go into you assuming you're just saying it for no apparent reason, but you will have the ideas to back it up.
They usually shut up after I shut them up.
What do you think is the biggest misconception in tech at the moment? Who's doing the cheerleading for what that you think really the cheerleaders should take down their pants and have a good look at what they're doing?
I think that right now, Apple, even though the Apple guys, they do hate me and they disparage me as much as they can because I used to be an anti-editor of Apple magazine, which I was actually paid to be critical of the company, but they don't quite get that. It's too complicated. But I think right now Apple is like the Wile E. Coyote that runs off the cliff and he's standing in midair and he doesn't know that there's nothing underneath until he looks.
Is this purely because of the death of Steve Jobs, or do you think?
I think it has. I think that's the primary element. Now that said, Wile E. Coyote doesn't necessarily kill himself when he falls to the bottom, because as I see the newer and newer phones come out, Apple owns a couple aspects of the market. I mean, they own the mind share of what a smartphone should be, but I don't know that they can take it any further. And I think Steve Jobs complained about it in that book that Google stole the idea. They're essentially ripped off everything, and they're putting more effort into it, and it's cheap. And so the Google Android to me, I don't see it being as much different. And I have to say, playing now with some Nokia phones, that it's a pleasant experience. The Windows phone, I don't think it's as good as either of the other two platforms, but if it's a low price, it's very satisfying. The Windows Phone 7 is 7.5 now. So Apple's got this problem because they're never going to undersell anybody. The Macintosh, I think they have not done all they could do to make the platform more popular. The iPad, they own that market. Nobody has a clue how to, I don't know why, but they can't seem to make it. All I know is that nobody has anything comparable. And I would say if you're going to buy a pad, you buy an iPad. And if there's an iPad 3 coming out, that's the one you buy. You have to pay $200 more for it than something equivalent. That's what you buy anyway. It really is the definitive product. The iPod market is dead. Essentially their market share is high, but they're still holding on for dear life for their Wile E. Coyote style with the iPhone.
You also got some pretty strong views on the millennial generation that's coming up now, which are different from Generation Y. You seem to have some interesting theories about them as well. Would you like to explain them to our audience?
We have a show called GenerationX3.mevio.com that people might want to check out. I have me and 3 millennials. They're all in their 20s. I have a son who's also 26. And they have a worldview that is so alien in so many ways that it makes for an interesting conversation because they have strong opinions. The opinions are, I think, equivalent to baby boomer opinions, people my age, that have strong, forceful opinions and don't mind promoting the opinions. These kids are pretty opinionated. Some of the opinions are weird.
Do you think it's because they're used to saying what they like to who they like online?
It could be. They could have trained themselves because they were online since day one. I mean, let's say they're typically 25 years old. Well, the internet shows up in 1995, and that's 25 years ago? Or say 15, it'd be 19, 11, I guess, or 15, 20 years ago.
And they also seem a lot less concerned about privacy.
This bothers me.
Is that just because they're young and they haven't got a history of people making...
I'm hoping that's what it is. I just wrote a column today, as a matter of fact, in PC Magazine discussing how we've changed from being modest as a culture regarding usage of cell phones in restaurants. these mobile phones came out some years ago, and people, if they rang in a restaurant, you'd be scolded and you'd have to go outside, and it was rude. Today, people are answering the phone in restaurants routinely. They're ringing. They're making calls from the restaurant. They're going online to surf the internet to look stuff up on the restaurant. They're using the phones to take photos incessantly at the restaurant. They're taking pictures of their food. They're taking pictures of each other. And this is all going on during a dining experience. All these things would have been verboten, 15 years ago.
Isn't this just going to happen with people talking to their phone with things like Siri? That's going to become commonplace, people talking
That's, I think, is the next big bad thing. I mean, this idiotic Siri product, 90% of the time just sends you to the internet. People are more preoccupied with these phones. They're online, they're surfing the internet, they're talking to Siri, they're talking to their friends, than they are with the company that they're with.
You're also a guy who likes bringing back old words that haven't been used, because you make up your good ones like bogative, but you've got those classic old ones. You just don't. Cripes.
Cripes is a word that needs to be reintroduced. But there's a lot of old phrases that I hear every so often on. There's a good one. We got to reintroduce that term. I mean, some of the stuff goes way back. My mother used to say, she would complain that when I was a little kid, she'd complain that my room was a mess. It looked like the wreck of the Hesperus.
Which is an old shipping reference?
I always wondered, because you'd always say it meant a mess. I always really wondered about this phrase and why it would even catch on, because it was apparently very popular in the 30s or the 40s or someplace along that era, until I saw online, and people should do this, look up the photos and do images for the wreck of the Hesperus. It is the most amazing mess you have ever seen in your life at sea. It is just garbage from, to the horizon. It is a real mess. And I could see, the wreck of the Hesperus, would be a nice thing to bring back if people would just go look at these pictures. It's like, holy mackerel, that is a wreck. I had one the other day. I was at some office and I said, well, I guess I better, I had to do something. I said, I guess I better get on the stick. Getting on the stick is like, what does that mean? What is get on the stick? I looked it up, and it refers to a stick shift. And apparently when you're sitting there and idle and you want to get going, you put it in gear, you get on the stick, and it makes sense.
You're also a ham radio operator as well. Do you get on the stick there and do much CQing?
No, not as much as I'd like to. I mostly monitor channels and listen in, and I wanted to have the skill sets because I think it's a handy thing to have. It's a good emergency skill set to have in case something happens. At some point, the only people who ever get to communicate in a real disaster are hams.
John C. Dvorak, you've said we're living in the golden age of the internet, in which you think there will be more government regulation which will not allow us to do things we currently accept as normal. How do you think, and when do you think that would happen?
Well, it's just creeping. It's a creeping process. Eventually, the government will regulate the internet in each country. I think it may even turn toward a national internet where you're basically cut off from all the other internets, except if you have a special license, let's say, or special privileges, or you're in academia. Most people in the United States that use the internet for Facebook and Amazon and 2 or 3 others, they wouldn't even care. And I'd say this with most countries. They wouldn't care an iota if the internet was locked down and it was national only. I mean, how many people are really going to Taiwanese sites or checking out the daily news source in Indonesia or South Africa? They're not doing it. It's just that no one would care. That's why you can pull this off, and it's going to happen.
Certainly a very interesting information source is the No Agenda show. You work with Adam Curry. That must be a really interesting ongoing journey for you, even someone who's been in the media for years.
Well, it's interesting for a number of reasons. One is we're doing something that's a little off base, and we just both have a knack for it. I mean, I've always been a deconstructionist. I like to take things apart. Like information, I like to take it apart and find out that it's, planted by somebody, or it's structured. I'm always railing about Noam Chomsky, for example. I find people that are big Noam Chomsky readers. But
he does have one of the best Wikipedia and most complete Wikipedia entries.
Can you imagine? That Wikipedia thing is a joke. I mean, it's like somebody spent their life putting that thing in. They're obviously a Noam Chomsky nut. Nobody should have an entry that large. But his style of writing is what really bothers me. And his style of speaking too, but he cheats. He uses all kinds kinds of interesting little tricks to get you thinking along a certain way, and then we'll agree with him. I mean, it's almost like he's like a weird soft sell sales guy. And I find that people who really like him and don't see through this, I really find it offensive. I really don't trust anyone who's a Noam Chomsky fan, for example. They're being bamboozled by this guy.
What is your main topic you really love getting stuck into at No Agenda there with Adam Curry? Because the two of you're certainly on the same page, but you have very differing opinions about certain elements, particularly in the second half of the show.
Well, he likes to do that. He always he believes all that stuff, by the way. It's not like he's phoning it up. But he knows that, we can self-marginalize a little bit because occasionally we bump into some facts that certain people might not appreciate us revealing.
I know. No, Apple's going to become a bank. Someone else told me that. I like that theory a lot. Apple has now, what, $100 billion almost?
Yeah.
So why don't they just...
Over 100.
Yeah, why don't they just become a bank? They already
not?
Yeah, they already got your credit card and your address book.
That's their exit strategy.
Just becoming a bank. No, I think it's totally possible. And by the way, if you think Apple is not evil in this whole address book thing, you're crazy. Apple is absolutely evil. They're putting all your shit together. They've got your credit card. Thank you very much for buying that stupid 99-cent Rihanna song. And they're selling all that information. I mean, I'm so close to going all Linux. I am. There's like 2 pieces of software that doesn't run on Linux yet. And if I can get that, I'm out.
Well, actually, I would have probably take that approach if Adobe ever put its editing suite on Linux. It would be, I think it would be all over for everybody.
But aren't there enough open source programs that do exactly the same?
No, they don't do exactly. They don't come close. It's a joke.
Well, what do you use Adobe for other than to read PDFs? You actually create PDFs? What do you need that for?
Yeah, I create. Well, you need if you're going to publish a book. You have to create PDFs. I mean, you have to do it with Adobe software. You can't do it with any of these clone softwares because none of these publishing or printing shops will take it. They say, no. Look, you're going to be doing this. You do it right. You do use the Adobe product because that's what we're standardized on.
Okay. So
and I also use Illustrator all the time, and I'm always on Photoshop, and I use some of the advanced features. I can't use the GIMP.
But if we have a kind of a zany flying saucer orientation at some point every so often, we can be, those guys, they're kind of nuts, which keeps anyone at bay from, trying to shut us down, as it were, and not that we're paranoid.
On Maynard.com.au.